Okay, everybody. I'm Rory, and I'm introducing myself, of course, because my hair changes on a semi-regular basis, and I never know when you're not going to recognize me. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that. And I am here today in the Patterns and Practices building, which is it's like the coolest building on Microsoft that I know of right now, because they've got all this remodeled stuff, and you guys have those expensive chairs, right?
We do.
What are they called?
They're they're not arrows. They're the new ones. They're the ones that come after the arrows. The Herman Miller fancy something.
Well,
cool
whatever
chairs.
it is.
The cool chairs with the mesh and
Yeah, well, my boss didn't get me any chairs like that, so I like to come out here and just sit in your chairs and just kind of enjoy
Well, we have
it,
these two, which aren't quite as comfortable as cool as they are looking cool.
You haven't been to Building 18, have you?
No.
Okay, thanks. So, anyway, we're here, and who am I with today exactly? We'll start with this gentleman.
Yeah, I'm Edward Jashersky. I am an architect in Patterns and Practices. That means I work around a lot with all the teams here. And
I'm Peter Provost. I'm the development team manager for Patterns and Practices, and have worked on the development teams for the last couple of years, and now I am privileged to lead them, manage them, stuff like that.
Okay, so this is kind of exciting for me because going all the way back to like the PDC of 2003. Peter and I became conference buddies. And that's how I know this guy. And I never ever would have imagined that we were going to be sitting, together in a scene like this and doing an interview like this. But
well, at the time, neither one of us worked for Microsoft.
And neither one of us was sober. And
I think we were both MVPs, though.
No, I was not an MVP.
Oh, right, you were the cheater
scandal.
MVP. You were the scandal.
Oh, you just had to bring that up. Cheater. Is that what you said, cheater?
Yeah.
All right, very good. Well, your life is in my hands since this interview.
were you not sober at the conference?
That would be correct. That's what a conference is for. I mean, really, it's to eat all the bananas and the candy and sometimes go to talks. But yeah, no, it was wonderful. That was a really great time, and that was like when everything was just starting. That was when the blogging was really starting to go crazy. And
wave.
yeah, and I don't even know how we met, but we just ran into each other.
Yeah.
And just became friends. And then at each subsequent conference, we would just see each other and hang out and run around and cause trouble. And we had like our whole crew too, just all the other people we'd hang out with.
Somehow we ended up here?
Yeah, that is really weird. Like a lot of us work here now.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sorry.
You work here?
I do work here. Yeah, this is
okay.
See,
one of those things.
Yeah, I've got one of those things. So, now I haven't met you before. Now, what's the full name? The last name I couldn't quite get either.
It's Edward Jashersky. It's Polish, so it's complicated and full of consonants. But that's a good first shot.
Is it like that long?
Yes.
On paper? Huh. So are you from Poland?
I'm actually from Argentina.
Oh, really?
And I came over here a bunch of years ago. I started to work in developer support, helping people with middleware, Complas, NTS, and things like that. And that's actually where I met Jeff for the first time.
Okay.
And then actually came over here, Patterns and Practices, started working on infrastructure things, and eventually we kicked off a developer initiative to start shipping components and stuff for free, and that led us to building a developer team, which is when we hired Peter, because we were looking for developers who would be positive to working in more agile ways, and we were starting to wet our toes and all that. So Peter joined in right at that time, and has jumped in and helped us drive a lot of that transition.
I'm sorry about asking where you're from. I think that's an HR violation. But I was just
Only if
curious.
you're hiring him, but that's already done.
That's fine.
Oh, really? So
Yeah, it's
You can do it now.
Cool.
I'm Canadian. Don't make it.
Actually, no, you're kidding. Okay, so anyway,
And we can make fun of Argentina.
Okay.
So in a way, your background with all the middleware and Complas and all that kind of prepped you for everything that's happening here. I mean,
Well, let me tell you a little bit what prepped me. We were working in support, right? And essentially it's about being able to solve people's problems. And one thing we realize is that the platform that you're working on, that the tools you're working on will never be perfect. No matter which one it is, no matter who builds it, it will never be perfect. It will always be something that is slightly harder, something that surprises you. But with the right advice and with the right hand-holding, everything is easier. And to win, necessarily, you don't need to have the best platform or tools. You just need to have the right advice at the right time.
Yeah.
And we noticed that we could just start preventing problems instead of helping people once they had them by writing up the right pieces of content and shipping out the right snippets of code. And
so this is something that kind of like grew out of. I mean.
Well, there were a lot of people in the company at that point in time. Visual Basic 6, C++, Complas, MTS. All these DNA technologies had to put together, and it wasn't super clear how to do it. So there were a lot of people around in consulting and field and PSS, and customers were saying like, this has got to be easier. So there was this ragtag team called DNA Architecture Guidance that we met non-sober situations.
Dag.
Just to, to discuss what could be done, and eventually that evolved into becoming PAG, Prescriptive Architecture Guidance Group.
Okay.
And
so
then we started changing
what that
the
stood for.
names.
Yeah. I always try to figure out how patterns and practices, got abbreviated to PAG. So.
It happened slowly over time, and even PAG meant different things at different times.
Right. We changed the name of the group, but we always made sure that the new name would still use the old acronym. That's a good way to read
Until
stationery
this
and
one,
stuff.
until patterns and practices, and then we lost it.
So one brief note I should make here. This is like a little behind-the-scenes excitement for the viewers out there. I just want to make sure everybody's like projecting because the camera is really far away. It's not usually this far away, but today it's far away.
Okay.
So just make sure everybody can hear you. We are going to use our nature voices. We're going to rawr.
Project.
So let's kind of start from the beginning of this. Right? I mean, like, what exactly do you do here? I mean, what is this group? What's it for? Why do you guys have such a cool building? I mean, obviously you're getting funding for something. What do you do?
We'll get to the cool building afterwards, but Ed, tell them what we do.
Okay, so what we do is try to help customers building applications and things, make it with less effort, and be able to build better things with less effort. So how do we do that? Well, the first step is really trying to see what people are trying to build, right? Learning what are their challenges, learning what are the things that they have to deal with again and again and again, and trying to synthesize what would be the simplest areas in which we could help that would take a lot of that pain away,
right,
and would also not just take pain, but enable them to do new things that they would otherwise not be able to do. So by talking to all these customers and aggregating all these challenges, these patterns emerge, and then from there we consolidate lists of things that we could do to help them out, and we actually have engineering teams, dev, test, PM, all that, creating tool extensions, source code components, pattern books, and all these things to help people download this code, download these tools, put it in Visual Studio, and just build their applications with less effort.
Okay.
So the application blocks, the software factories, and everything you see in Microsoft.com/practices is produced here in this whole environment.
Huh. So what that makes me think of is almost like, okay, so we're Microsoft. Let's say that we built a car. Okay, I don't know why cars are always used as examples, but like, perfect, car. So we built a car. In a way, it sounds like, we might put a car out, and it's a good car. It drives around, people are happy with it, but maybe some of the controls are a little weird, or they aren't quite sure exactly. Maybe it's not as comfortable as it could be. Like, not all the creature comforts are there. It's almost like you guys come along after the car's been out for a while, you figure out where all the pain points are, and you put a little more padding in the seat, like you might simplify a few buttons or replace the stereo, and
there's a little bit of that.
But sometimes we tell people how to replace the stereo.
Huh.
Sometimes we provide a new stereo. Sometimes we provide a new engine. Sometimes we tell them how to drive better. Right? The metaphor stretches a little thin here, but ultimately, Ed said, we're about improving the developer experience on the platform. We're trying to just make sure that line of business enterprise developers who are building systems, for their companies and for their jobs have an easier time with it.
Okay, so
and I would like to add something to the metaphor. Sometimes you build a great car that has a lot of creature comforts, but then people just start driving differently. Suddenly people decide that driving in the desert or on the beach is cool, and suddenly having a car, tweaking and modding your car a little bit to do that. So that doesn't mean that the car didn't have something in the beginning, but it's just that people are using it somewhat differently than what you expected up front.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was trying to say, but I wasn't able to say it quite in such a positive way as you did. But yeah, I totally understand that. So somebody has a car, it's great, but they decide they want to off-road, so they got to get big, huge tires and wheels and stuff, and you kind of help them do that. So this sounds like really complicated, to be honest with you, because you must have to. I mean, I'm just guessing here, from what you've said so far. You go out and you have to look at just all these different projects from all these different companies, all these different people, all these different devs, all these different styles. Because one thing we know is that, software development is a craft. It's not a science at all. It's closer to like an art. You can express the same functionality in so many different ways. That
it's team art.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, people have so many different ways of doing things. They write their own logging libraries. They write their own extended UI components, whatever. Right. and you guys have to look at all, or as much as you can, and somehow like derive meaning and sense out of it, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that's very interesting about the approach we take is to try to find ways to interface with representative customers of the people we target. And so we can't hit everybody, we can't hit everything, but we have people on our team whose job it is to find those people, to talk with them, to bring them in. What the people watching can't see is that behind the camera is a room that has a big sign on it called the customer room.
Oh, yeah.
And that room is for when customers come to visit us. They can go in there, we have a home for them. And then our teams can come out of these rooms that are over here, the development team spaces.
And we're going to show you this stuff later.
And interact and interface with them directly. Talk about what their problems are, talk about what their pain points are, learn from them, think about it, turn that back into the guidance we produce. Then bring in the next customer, bring in the next consultants, bring in the next group of people. And so we're always doing that while we're producing what we're producing.
And we call it the week at PAC. For example, we were working together on a project. We would have a big customer sitting right there, and they would be hacking away on a very early version of something we shipped called the Composite UI application block. Mm-hmm. And they would be like, well, wouldn't it be great if you can get to like the parent context from the child context and some other technical stuff? Mm-hmm. And we're like, give us a second. We went there, changed the code, give him a new drop, and say, how does that feel? Well, I really meant more like this. We went back next day, we gave him a new drop. Is that what you wanted? Oh, that's perfect, because it allows me to blah, blah, blah.
It's a very, very interesting experience.
And that's
you
the utility.
You said it's stuff, right?
Yeah.
And of course there is a lot of work involved in it, but I would say one thing simplifies it. What simplifies is that people are wanting to tell you how you can help them.
Right.
And if you can get into that dialogue,
people do like
people
to
are
complain.
willing to say, I will filter through all these things that are not relevant to you, and will try to communicate with you, so I just tell you what is important, where I believe you can help me. And by having that two-way dialogue, it's much simpler.
This actually sounds like fun.
It is. And Rory, you asked the question there, kind of, that's kind of where the Agile thing has to come into play, and it's absolutely right. I mean, we could not be this reactive and responsive to customer needs if we weren't using, a very Agile approach to software development. And I came from an Agile background before joining the team, so I will admit to being a bit of a zealot and having some passions around that. But ultimately, it's imperative for a team like this, who's going to be this reactive and responsive to customer needs, to have that kind of an approach, right? If we're going to discover a problem, hang out with customers to learn about it, deliver with their very tight feedback loops, and wrap the whole thing up in less than a calendar year, it takes a little bit of a different approach to get that done. Yeah. And we've been doing it over and over again for years now, so we obviously have something that's working. And ultimately, I think our Agile approach, our customer-connected nature, the way we interface and bring the customers in on a very regular basis, with the community building stuff that Ed and others kind of started years ago, is they're all coming together to let us do what we do. And I agree with you, it's a blast.
Yeah, it's super fun. Another interesting thing that happens is that we build the things in an Agile way, but we also try to share as much as we can. We give out the source code, we give out the unit tests, we try to give us as many of the utilities that we use internally as we can, because then you also see where people take the things, they mod them, they tweak them, they twist them, and just by looking what they modded and why, it's also a great way of learning what could we have done better, and what extension points should be there, and what ultimately .NET as a whole could do better to simplify that.
Well, I'll tell you, in my last job as an MSc and events presenter, one of the things I got to present on one quarter was the stuff that you guys were doing, the patterns and practices, all the application blocks and everything, right? Mm-hmm. And that was the only demo that I've ever done in my life, and I've done a lot of demos, right? I mean, it was my job, for 2.5 years, pretty much, to just go around and give talks that were, hours long and everything. That was the only demo I ever did where I demoed the documentation, because
it was worth it.
No, the documentation was so good that it was the first thing I showed people. Because, I mean, you could look at the application blocks as something you could just plug into an application and use and run with and have a good time, but what I found was that a lot of the people in the audience, more so than using the application blocks, wanted to know what drove them, right? They wanted to. The fact that you guys shipped the code was a huge deal.
But they really wanted to know why. They wanted to know why we made the decisions we made and how we made those decisions. And ultimately, people want that in our docs more than they actually want API docs.
That's what I showed them. Because you had the whole story in there. It was like, you know, here's why we made these decisions. Here's exactly why, you know, we're dealing with database connections in this way. Here's why, you know, we're dealing with, you know, the idea of abstraction in terms of the back end, right? All of that. I mean, I was like, I was reading it out loud like a storybook to these people, you know, because that's what it was, you know, and it goes
Hopefully
back to
you got good speaker scores for those sessions.
Loved that. No, I'm not kidding. It was one of the funnest sessions to do, and people loved it. But it goes back to a question that I remember seeing on a lot of blogs and a lot of forums, because for a while there, right, I mean, you know, the idea of, you know, patterns and practices is relatively new, right? I mean, yeah, sure, it's been around, kind of like blogging, it's been around for a long time before anybody called it blogging, you know. There's always going to be like a best of breed way of doing something. And this does lead up to a question, I'm not just giving a speech here.
You can.
But one of the things that people were always asking was, how do we determine what is the proper, you know, pattern or practice? And remember, right after .NET 1.0 was released, you know, within 3 weeks you had people saying, well, what's the right way to do this? What is the standard practice for this? And those people just get flamed.
Yep.
Somebody would come along and say, well, you've got to put this stuff out in the wild, you know, long enough to see what problems emerge and how we're going to deal with them. So, I mean, my question is, I guess, like, how does it get done? Like, how do you determine, with so many different ways of doing something, there might be a way you like, but there isn't necessarily a correct way, right? There might be a best way that you know, but not like a correct, absolutely correct
There's
way.
no such thing as correct, and that's actually why we don't say best practices. We say proven practices.
Oh, so that's changed.
Right. No, yeah,
Okay, that's good.
we've never said best practices about
no
our
such
work.
thing as a
lot
best
of people
practice.
like to say that. We say proven practices, and what that means is
Because they're very adamant about
we.
that.
No, we're adamant about it for a reason,
Yeah.
because ultimately what we're saying is we've gone out and talked to real customers,
Yeah.
real consultants, the people who write the books, the people who give the conference talks, the product group leaders, the architects, the developers on the team. Across the board, that's our job. And then we bring from that what appears to be, you know, the proven answers that exist. And it can be answers, not one answer. And then we try to bring that out in a way that's generalizable, try to extract the pattern from it, find the generalized form, and give that out so that instead of just 10 people taking advantage of it, thousands or millions of people take advantage of it.
Right. At the same time as we try to be very sensitive to the context, because again, the good practice or proven practice for somebody in one context doesn't work in another context.
Right.
So it's always important. A good piece of advice is, if you're not just trying to do this will not be the best thing for you. It's like don't try this.
That was one of the things that I loved so much about giving that talk. Okay, it's that when you looked at the documentation, you know, and this touches on two things. First of all, what you just said about proven practices versus best, that clears up so much confusion. Because best is an absolute. There can only be one best, you know, and that's what people were looking for, and that's why they were always so upset. Because you can never find the best. I love that idea of proven. Okay. Item number 2 is the level of just like, you know, humility that was in the docs. I remember one of the sections I always pointed out to people was in the database abstraction area, you know, where the docs, instead of saying we're the end all be all perfect solution for everything, we're the best, which is what a lot of people do when they're pushing their products, it said, you know, this might just not work for you. You know, there might be a case here where you're going to be able to just use straight up ADO.NET and it's going to be much better off for you, and you try to, you know, give scenarios where, you know, either technology would work better, and I thought that was fantastic. Just the lack of ego.
Well, what we try to do is to sit on the same side of the table as a customer trying to write some code, and you know, think what does it feel like to be in that spot, and what is the best advice we can give. And sometimes the best advice is like, stay clear of this, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And it was really a matter of talking with customers. They're willing to tell you, please tell me when not to do something. I've been burned so many times at just trying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Tell you then, don't use our stuff if it's not the right thing.
Yeah, the composite user interface application block, as a for example, has a lot of very interesting and broad uses in smart client scenarios. But it also isn't appropriate for other kinds of scenarios in the smart client space. And we try to be clear when talking to people, you know what? That sounds like a scenario where this probably doesn't fit very well.
Yeah.
Perhaps you should go and look at that or that over there.
Yeah. I thought that was simply amazing. Just the way that you don't see that in docs.
Not very often.
Yeah, looking up just general API docs, for example, finding a particular method, you know, from a particular class, whatever, it's going to be very, very rare that you're going to see a little message in there along with the definition of the method that says, yeah, but there's another one, somewhere else that might work better than this, right?
Yeah.
So that was actually amazing. Now there's something that comes to mind as a result of some things you said a minute ago. You were talking about how you meet with the customers, the people who read the books, and looking at everything that happens. It makes me it makes me think about the time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to really scramble and you really got to be on your toes here, because by the time you come up with best practice, the next version of whatever it is you're describing best practice for might already be out, right? How do you deal with that?
Well, that's a lot of where interacting with the product group is important, because yes, we're talking to community members, we're talking to customers, we're talking to the experts, and we're talking to the product group. So we're trying to figure out where they're going.
Yep, and there's also another thing is that because we're here in Microsoft and we can just hop over to building 42 and whatever other building is relevant, we can go, hey, what do you think are your plans for this?
Yeah.
And what do you think you're doing for this? And we can actually tweak the proven practices to stay clear of danger areas or to help channel people into the right areas proactively. Right?
Because you have visibility down.
We have visibility. It's like, oh, we'll be doing this infrastructure. So for example, how do you do offline applications? Well, how should they think about message-based offline applications versus REST and data exchange offline applications? And when we're building any type of guidance around that, we kind of consider providing the proven practices in a format that mimics what the future might look like to some extent.
Or at least moves them in the direction
Right.
that the future will be well aligned with where they are.
And sometimes it can be very subtle, like choosing certain words, to describe some certain scenarios or some names. And sometimes it can be quite concrete, like we will use this type of format in a log entry, so tools 2 years from now can still take those messages and correlate to that. So
Wow. Okay.
yeah. So there's a lot of internal job in terms of fixing up what we do to align with things that are coming from the inside as appropriate.
That's
Without compromising the proven practice.
it. Kind of blows my mind.
It's hard, but it's also, as you said, it's fun. You get to play with the most amazing stuff and play with the coolest people constantly.
We ship every year a bunch of times.
Yeah, you would have to, because when I think about this, and I don't mean to slight the company for which we work. I mean, you pay my bills and everything, right? But but the thing is, Redmond can be very insular, so it could be very easy to put out a product that might look great on the whiteboard and look great in review sessions and whatnot, but hit the wild and there could be like a pretty big problem there. And in a way, you guys are kind of here to make sure that doesn't happen, or to help solve the problem if it does happen.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you hit both aspects of that, because one of the things that I think is most important about our mission is not just the act of helping the customers build better apps on our platform, but it's helping the product groups build better apps for our customers. That's the best part for me.
Right, and again, the same type of humility we try to take with the customers, we have to take internally, because you got the best experts building every piece of the platform, the best experts found worldwide. So what we can do is bring down the priorities that customers have told us, bring down the scenarios, bring down the requirements, and that's what we try to convey back.
Yeah.
Saying, these are the problems that are top 10. Like a big win for us is, for example, when things such as link and GeoLink and ADO entities ship. Because we say, hey, look, in the data access space, we see all these problems. And of course, ADO could have evolved to have point solutions to those problems. But in that particular case, what they did is they changed the whole way you do data access, so that those problems don't even really matter as much. I mean, they're irrelevant now. So that's a big win. But sometimes the platform evolves in steps, and if we can make those steps more informed, all the better. But that takes a lot of two-way relationships and constant conversations. Yeah.
I'm gonna, be really honest here for a minute. My main reason for doing the interview was that I like the building and I know Peter, and I liked giving the presentation on the stuff you guys have built, but I had no idea how involved and intricate this whole process is. I had no idea.
I don't know if it's what's funny is being in it.
Intricate doesn't resonate with me as much.
It doesn't feel involved and intricate.
I'm not asking you for it to resonate. I'm dictating. I'm saying.
Okay.
It doesn't feel involved and intricate. It feels like the right way to talk to people and make software.
It's straightforward.
Just
you ask
honest.
people what hurts. You listen to them. You see what things are coming down the pipe to help with that. You try to build something that in the meantime helps out with it. whatever you learn out of that, you will give back to the product. And all that you build, you share out to see where people take it in unexpected places.
Well, I'm realizing
Every day it seems pretty easy. I mean, it's a lot of work, but...
Well, it seems like, I mean, to use another analogy, not a car, to use another analogy, you guys strike me as being, I don't know if I can mention this, I think I can mention this legally. Do you remember that, the IBM commercial about connectors, and the guy took out the thingy, the connector that had about 8 billion different plugs on it?
Yes, yes. It does everything.
It looked like Sputnik, totally gone wrong. Yeah. You guys, in a way, strike me as being that connector. I mean, you have to be tied into so...
Well, except in that commercial, we know that thing didn't actually get anything done, right?
Yeah.
I like that we get something done.
It didn't ultimately do anything, and that was almost the point, really.
Yeah.
But that's... Yeah, my metaphors have been really bad this interview. I'll admit that.
That's okay. That's fine.
But you guys really do have to connect with so many different aspects. I mean, how do you do it, right? There's that room over there, which I'm pointing to, and it's unfair to the people at home because they can't see. But there's this room over here with all those fancy schmancy chairs. By the way, I understand now you earned them, okay?
We just talked people into giving us money, that's all.
How do you do it? What is a day in the life? Wait, no, before we go down this road, I'm sorry, I'm being a bad interviewer. What are your titles?
I am lead software development engineer,
Okay.
and Ed is
Architect of patterns and practices.
architect.
Okay, I think you guys mentioned that. Architect. So,
But
before...
you let me just go straight to your question.
Yeah, then what is a day?
Stop for a minute. All right, so
And your day starts
these-
earlier
I'm just
than
so
mine.
excited.
Well, I'm not going to talk about my day. I'll talk a little bit about, first of all, how these kind of teams are structured, and then I'll let Ed tell you about his day, because that'll show you a lot.
Okay.
These teams are kind of structured in a very cross-functional way, all right? So a team will have some developers on it, some testers on it, an architect or architects, a project manager or a program manager, and a product manager who's that customer-facing person. Each one of those people has very overlapping responsibilities in terms of getting the thing delivered, but ultimately they kind of own, you can imagine overlapping circles that pull away from each other, right?
Yeah.
So the devs are getting code written, the testers are getting tests written, but the devs and the tests have a lot of overlap because they have to coordinate. So they're all together in one of these rooms, all of those different groups of people. And they all have different responsibilities, pulling them in different ways. And so their day is to come together, talk, write code, have fun, listen to music, write code, go to the whiteboard, draw pictures, listen to customers, write code.
How do they communicate? Is it just...
Stand up and yell.
That's... Okay, once we're done talking, can we actually go and look at the room?
Sure we can.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, cool. So that people understand just how different this is from a typical...
So another thing we do is we have some people in the team actually be remote, living in other continents as well. So we actually try to learn on how to make that work for us, right? We have some developers in one continent, a technical writer in another one, a tester in another one, and you have this team working around the clock sometimes, and you're all working towards the same goal in a very fast pace. So we end up using a lot of voice over IP and a lot of projection and communicator and shared sessions where we actually repair.
Keep talking.
Yeah, and write code, write code together, but across a wire between two distant offices, and have a way of keeping that communication going even though we're not there, right?
So you have to use pretty much every available communications technology.
Oh, we really do,
Yes,
yeah.
everything that works.
Sorry about this, by the way. It's just technology reminding me.
That's what I love about Channel 9 is it's real world, not staging this, right?
Speaking of which, wait, real quick. I want to make sure this is actually recording because this is probably one of the best interviews I think that ever done. I just want to make sure that
Is the red dot on?
the red dot's on. I just want to make sure that we're
And
getting
actually,
this.
it sucks when you screw that up because you can never make it the second one the same way.
That's why I was so
Yeah.
paranoid. I've never done that before. It
Yeah.
was yeah.
So literally, you asked how do they communicate? How do they talk? Well, yes, there's the digital channels when we need them and when they're appropriate. When everybody is in the same room together, it's often one of these things where I turn to Ed and I go, "So Ed, how does this work?" And he rolls his chair around and we sit at my computer and we play with it. And then suddenly, you're on the other side over there and you hear us chatting and you're like, "No, it doesn't work that way," right? And then you roll over with us, and then a tester comes over with us.
And the tester's
and we're
always
like,
hovering,
"Okay."
going like, well, if it works like that, then I need to retest
Yeah, my
everything
test is-
because
my
you're,
test is-
you're changing it now.
Right,
on
and
me.
that's really the essence of kind of the agile approach to things, is that, you know what, let's get people together, let's talk about it, let's fight through it, let's figure it out, and let's get it right.
Wow.
Right? We don't hide in our offices and send IMs to each other in meeting requests.
I worked in a place where I sat next to a guy, Andy Phoenix, if you're watching, by the way, hello. And he was right next to me, and we would IM to each other. Yeah, it was So that's one of the reasons this is such a different kind of thing. And
Well, we were just talking before here. You lower the friction of communication, and suddenly you're sharing many more things, right?
Yeah.
You are talking about things that you would have deemed little, but you don't let them escalate in time. Things get caught. We prevent more bugs than the ones we catch. We still catch all the ones we can, but I'm amazed if you look at one day in the team room, how many times the testers and the devs work together and refine their understanding of how to improve the quality, just not on handing code over the wall and then bugs over the wall, but rather talking about it and being able to focus the test better and focus the code better.
Yeah, there's more than one time when Ed or and myself or somebody else, a couple of devs or an architect were arguing over a point and coming to resolution, and one of the testers would come over and kind of just look over our shoulder what we're talking about and say, there's a bug there. Right? I haven't typed the code in yet. I've just started kind of getting a skeleton of what this code's about to look like, and he's already seen a multi-threading bug there.
Yeah.
wow.
I'm like, okay, hold on, and he engages and we talk about it, and now the bug never even existed. We killed it before it came into existence. It's the coolest thing ever when you work like that.
Right. Another thing we try to have constantly in the room is some representation of the customer. We're lucky when we have customers here physically, or when we have our product managers who are in charge of bringing in the customer information. But if anything, when you don't know what to do, your default stance should be, I would like customer input. That's a culture we want to encourage.
Yeah.
So by having people who represent the customer in there allows the dev to say, look, I could do this with like this in config, or I could do this like with this in code. And having somebody say, I'll stand up and I'll say, this is what I think the customer would need, and I'm willing to take that afterwards and verify it, is super cool because you don't waste your time.
Right.
You don't get bought into decisions that then might need to be changed.
You don't have to make a lot of
And
assumptions.
you don't have
get
trying
that
to
feedback.
convince your customers that what was the right one. Rather, you are able to have a dialogue, right? Without risking having cool ideas and putting them in front of them and saying, how do you like that? And customers go like, wow, I never thought of it, I loved it. Or, how do you think about that? That's disastrous. Forget about it. Next week it won't be there. Right?
Wow.
So,
So I'm guessing then you have a lot of impromptu meetings where, like little droplets of water on wax paper, the chairs roll across the room until you have $10,000 worth of very nice chairs all in a very small space and everybody talking. Does that happen?
Well, yeah, most of the team rooms actually organize their desks in a way that everybody's facing everybody else.
Is that even possible?
Yeah, you have big circles and
Yeah,
rectangles and
circle.
things, right?
Circle,
like triangles.
Yeah,
or-
circles and squares and triangles,
facing
things
the
where
inside.
people are on the outside.
I didn't want to get too technical, but
And so
Jeez.
sometimes you can just kind of have the over-the-desk discussion. Sometimes the chairs come together. Sometimes you stand up and go to a whiteboard. I mean, we're whiteboard junkies, as you'll see when we take the camera around.
well, I couldn't help but
We
notice
try to
the
have.
walls are whiteboards.
Yeah, I mean, this
Yeah.
wall behind me here is a whiteboard.
I don't
That
know.
one over there is a whiteboard. As almost every wall we could try to turn into a whiteboard is a whiteboard.
Yeah.
As long as we're pointing at things and talking about expensive chairs and such, what's with the TV? Why do you have this enormously,
It
probably
looks
very
really
expensive-
good.
It does look cool. Oh, it's for customers.
It has an Xbox on it.
When customers come in, they see the TV, they think these people know what they're doing.
Well, no, we use it for things. This space.
Like watching TV?
No, this space right here that we're sitting in is configured for video teleconferencing.
Really?
Right?
Yeah.
And every one of these team rooms has a projector in it and overhead speakers and is configured for video teleconferencing.
Yeah.
That customer room is configured for video teleconferencing. We don't have all of the video teleconferencing equipment installed yet because we kind of ran out of money. But
Well, right
But we
there,
kept the
probably,
TV.
yeah.
right, but we got the TV, so it was I'm being fair and honest here. But ultimately, we use it, so it's ready for that.
Someday.
We do use it for a lot of the company all hands meetings and things like that. That we can open up some of these walls again. People can't
Yeah.
see it.
Do you
And
have enough controllers for all hands meetings?
we have 4 controllers for that Xbox. We use it for presentations to our group, to teams. We can bring teams out. We can open this space, and that team room there can kind of open into one larger space.
So you can actually take what seems like a room and then turn it into a conference area.
Yep.
Yeah, for example, we had a team that was growing because we were bringing in people from offshore who were
Yeah.
here for a month or so, and we just decided to reconfigure the walls. So some of these walls you can, unscrew something on the top and on the bottom and just shift it over. Suddenly, a 6-people room transforms into a 12-people room, and you could just shuffle it as your teams evolve. And if you do it enough times, it doesn't become a
Look at that,
ceremony, and you can just do
quiet.
it.
We made him quiet.
I'm just dumbfounded. Are you guys hiring?
You missed me by a couple weeks, man.
For the people out there, are you guys hiring?
We're always interested in top-notch talent.
Because seriously, you guys are going to get some resumes probably from people who are.
We are always interested
you can
in
find
top-notch
us in
talent.
the career
Yes.
website.
But so then, theoretically, once you get funding again someday, once you've finally made the last payment on the television, you'll be able to set chairs up just along here and.
We do it sometimes in some of these spaces because some of them are kind of, you can borrow them and move them around. But yeah, I mean, we've experimented with a lot of interesting things to do with our projectors. Of course, you can use them for all the normal things, movies and video games. But you also, the teams will use them sometimes to kind of show status of what's going on with builds, or a couple guys can throw their code up really quick and immediately get all 10 people in the room to go, well, guys, what do you think of this? We just need a quick talk about this up on the room, up on the board. Everybody's like, yeah, change that, it'll be fine. Okay, good.
Right.
Comes back down again.
The goal there is making it simple to start communicating in a broader way, right?
Yeah.
So if you just can take a shared cable, plug it in the back of your laptop, hit the right magic key, and have the thing show up and say like, hey testers, what do you think of this? I'm kind of worried.
Wow.
Now suddenly you saved weeks because you didn't have to schedule a meeting and reserve a room for it.
You just
made
it and do it.
Yeah.
Right, so you just pull it up. And so we have this room, but we prefer people just making whatever it is that they're making in the team, their room they're in, right?
I have like so many millions of questions for you. Okay, now, I think this is just a little commentary here. I'm going to editorialize for just one brief moment. I think it's kind of neat that old school computers were rooms full of people, right? Sitting in rows in a grid form, with a bunch of desks out in the open. And then over the years...
A lot of people don't know that that's what the word computer comes from.
Yeah, and over the years, people got their own offices and their own cubicles, and now you're back to this big open room where people are all working together. That is...
What's
I
really
don't know what's happened there. Right?
Well, I was going to say, what's really interesting for me is
fight there.
no. Well, yeah, we both like to talk. I've done some presentations talking about our space and talking about agile software development around the world. And what fascinated me was to show up in Europe and talk to them about our new space and talk to them about sitting together and talking together and building software. And they all looked at me blankly. And I didn't know what the blank meant. I was kind of confused by that blank thing. I was like, either they really hate it and don't get it, or something else. And they were like, well, yeah, we have one of those too. Hold on, who in here works this way? And all the hands went up. So it's obviously a very American thing to go and hide in your office and close the door, as far as I can tell, because everybody I met in Norway and other places around Europe happily sits in big team rooms and works together.
Well, it's the way we live. Houses with big yards, isolated from each other, and you take a place like Norway and you have to stuff a lot of people. And
I think there's another effect as well. I mean, if you look at across in a real long time frame, languages have been getting simpler and more self-expressive. Screens have been getting bigger.
Yeah.
And before, when you were debugging an assembly program, you would need to be in absolute, church-like silence to hold all that stack and that heap in your mind as you read each instruction.
It was a little complicated.
And if somebody just came in and opened the door, it would be half a day of work gone, and you wouldn't be able to rehydrate that. As tools get better and as the languages get better and you can see more code and you don't need to hold as much code in your head because it's more expressive.
And we have storage devices now too, which is cool.
Yeah, like
that too.
And all that. You have to keep less things in your head, and the problem really is less about how can you individually make your code better, but how can a group of people collectively make the code better. So the bottleneck becomes less making the most out of somebody's brain to making the most out of the collective brain. Right?
Wow.
So suddenly being in your office debugging is absolutely a not good way of using a developer time. I would be very frustrated if I saw one of our developers just doing that all day. I was like, what a waste of talent.
I have to say, this is really not what I expected. A lot of what is being said here makes perfect sense, and yet, in all my time as a contractor, going from I wound up at a lot of companies. I never, ever saw that.
Well, there is some of this happening around the world. I mean, the Agile movement has been talking about, sitting together.
Is that what it is?
I don't want to blame it on Agile or blame Agile on this or any of those other kinds of things. I want to say that ultimately, you'll find when you go and read like the extreme programming books, there's a practice in there that says sit together, right? Well, we liked sitting together before we were doing XP.
Yeah.
And you actually, what's funny is I talk to people about, pair programming, which is one of the most controversial agile techniques. And they're always, that's all, can't do that, that's never going to work, I'm not going to sit with somebody else. And then you follow them around and watch them, and you watch how often they sit next to somebody else and work. Can you come help me? I got to debug this. Okay, we're pair programming, right? We're a social animal, and it only makes sense for this. But you're right, people resist it for some strange reason. And we started doing it by stealing a conference room. I'm not lying. In the old layout.
Stealing in the very precise
In the
sense
old
the
layout
word.
of this building, there was a triangular-shaped conference room right where we're sitting.
Right there.
Okay, right there. And it was probably about a 6-man conference room, and it was the Enterprise Library 1.0 team. And they were working in offices and just frustrated because they couldn't get that collaboration, camaraderie thing going. And so they moved into the conference room and booked it for 6 months. And you know what? Microsoft building admins really don't like that very much, and so they canceled the meeting on them.
And then we started doing smaller meetings by different people, but end to end, so they wouldn't detect it as easily.
And eventually what happened is the fights start, right? The admin chain of people starts yelling at the P&P management chain of people, and pretty soon we went all the way up to some sort of a VP or general manager level, and they were like, fine, you can have the conference, but you don't get any more, right? And that was the start of what became this build-out of this space, because that team got to do it, and then the other teams were like, well, where's mine?
Yeah, so it turned into a virus, and eventually things were...
And then what happened is a lab, the lab spaces, the big ones with the ladders overhead and the cold air conditioning.
Yeah.
One of those cleared out when a team left this building, and so suddenly we moved down there. We
Took
over that
some
one.
tables
Without
and just
asking,
put
you
them in
just-
there.
We took a lot of fighting, but we got that one, and it was a really big one, so we put up temporary walls and moved 2 teams in.
Yeah.
And then, Microsoft Research and the facilities people heard about us through the grapevine or something, and were like, we've been thinking about interesting space designs. How about we come and, play with you and maybe do a pilot for you and build your space out? And we were like,
I love the way that you guys came about. The idea that you stole a room to get started.
Yeah, no,
Can I get knuckles from you guys? Thank you for the
So,
knuckles.
what's funny is when I talk at conferences and people say, well, how did you get your space? I say, steal it.
Well, I hate to say it, we've got to start wrapping this up.
Okay.
And I'm coming back. That's the first thing to let you know. Because
Anytime.
First of all, I still have so many questions that I need to cover.
We should try to do one in a team room
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
a team.
With a team.
If we could, and
All around the
maybe
table.
the viewers could vote on this.
Yeah, sure.
What if we could maybe film a little bit of the process and
There might be interesting ways to do that. We should talk.
Yep.
I'm sure people would like to see one of these teams in operation.
I would
It'd be
love
fun.
to be able to show that. So before we end, I want to show first of all at least the sign that says customer room. I see that there are feet in there, so there are actual real life customers on site. Don't think I can show them without
No,
getting the
don't do
side
that.
documents and stuff. Fortunately, the glass is
It's
okay.
frosted, so you can't see them.
Good, yeah. And we can take a look in one of these rooms.
It also makes it easier to write on when they're frosted.
Yes.
Customers must find that really interesting, just reading a bunch of lettering backwards while
Yeah.
they're...
I mean, ultimately, these whiteboards that you're seeing behind us are glass. They're two pieces of glass with a white film between them, so they're spectacular.
That's
to write on.
fantastic. So I'm going to grab the camera.
Okay.
And
Let's take a walk
and
around.
As far as you're willing to take me, I guess, and as far as you're allowed to
We'll
take me.
go around this side, and that way you get a nice
Okay.
continuous take.
All right, we're moving to handheld mode here, so it might get a little shaky, people, but
right,
we're gonna be all right. Okay.
This way?
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and crack open a door here.
Oh, first, can I show the customer sign, the customer room?
Sure, you can.
Yes,
From
Okay.
there, you're safe to show the customer
This
room
is
sign.
the customer room, and as you can see, the sign says customer room. I don't know why I'm so excited about that. I just wanted to prove that you guys weren't lying or something. But and we were talking earlier about the walls literally being whiteboards
And
and
movable.
and
movable.
And so you're seeing, if you look all the way through, more whiteboards on the other side as the teams are working in these rooms.
And now those whiteboards can be moved aside to make
Yeah.
this room a larger
Yes.
room. Is that correct?
Yeah, and you can film the projector right there.
Oh, so
And the
Right.
whiteboards against the wall.
Dev, tester, PM right now.
wow. So we've got all these people working
Hey,
in the same room,
Francis, say hi.
and
Hello.
hey everybody. Yeah, you guys are gonna be on channel 9. Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, all right. Just for kicks, names. What's your name, sir?
Francis Chung.
Francis Chung.
Hi, my name is Gokul.
Uh huh.
Hi, I'm Vijaya.
Uh huh.
Rohit.
Okay. And you, sir?
Sanjeev.
Okay. Very good. Just wanted to say hi. Thank you. You've all been very
you.
patient.
Thank you.
Really neat room. Okay. Have fun.
So the other thing that's interesting is we have walls around the perimeter of the space. So all the team rooms are in the middle. These walls are actually movable as well. They're not as far as city codes are concerned, they're not walls; they're furniture.
Really?
Yeah, no. As far as the
It's a good
coding
way of
is,
making them
so,
movable.
So what that means is we don't have to get a permit to move them. We can actually make a facilities request. They pop out 2 pins at the top, 2 pins at the bottom, and they come right out.
Wow. So these are not walls, people. These are furniture. Okay.
And so lots of open, bright spaces. We'll come over here and we'll show you another one of the interesting things. A couple of these focus pods, which are closed off, sealed.
Focus pods.
Escape pods.
It's basically, there's a whiteboard in there and some nice soft
Hey,
chairs. That,
Say hi to Channel 9.
Hi there, how are you?
We're doing pretty well, actually. I'm very amazed by the setup here. And there's a nice echo effect. This is addictive,
That's by
really.
design.
I mean, I can hear myself. I just come in here and sing.
Yes.
Somewhere beyond the sea.
And the rooms come in different sizes. So this room you'll see is a lot bigger than the other one. And there's a team actively working in here, doing all kinds of interesting things. Everybody say hi to Channel 9.
Channel 9 says hi back.
Again, whiteboards all around, movable walls. So we can
Wow.
open these things up.
Yep.
That is just
The pattern
fantastic.
repeats all the way around. We have 5 of these team rooms of various sizes. They can be opened up and combined to make different sizes even bigger. We have offices around the perimeter that can also be reconfigured. Some of these offices,
Let me know if I'm going to run into anybody.
you're just fine. In fact, if you turn that way now, what you're going to see here is this is 2 offices where the middle dividing wall was taken out. Like I said,
Middle
they can be
dividing
removed.
furniture.
So
Okay.
the middle dividing furniture, because ultimately the people who live in this office wanted a collaboration space for 3 people instead of 2 separate offices.
Huh.
So even people who live in offices work through thinking about how they want to work together, and sometimes they give up on their on offices.
For example, the 3 architects in the team, we're sharing the conjoined office over there where we removed the partition as well, because we might as well geek out together
Yeah.
rather than be isolated.
That is amazing. Wow. Okay, so to close it out, I guess, can we go back the long way?
The long way.
Yeah, let's go back
Sure.
the long way
Back
just for
around the long
kicks.
way?
I'll just follow you guys.
Okay. Oh, you want to cut through? Let's cut through. That's kind of fun.
Well, no, let's
No, you
actually
have to pay $1 if you cut through. See?
let's go through this long way so that people can see how primitive the rest of the building is.
How primitive. That wasn't very nice.
This is one of the first Microsoft buildings, right? I mean, this is
Windows
this
number
was
5.
this was here
Building 5.
when things were just starting. Very different, as you can see from all the stuff we just looked
A
at.
bit of Windows 95.
That's a good hallway for you to peek down.
Okay. Yeah, very different from your office.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I came here, I actually got very, very lost. Very lost. So we've got all this like sort of a 1970s, 1980s architecture, and then
Exactly.
bam, this fancy
hi, Blaine.
sign,
hi.
and everything is different. What's your name, sir?
Blaine Wastel, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Doing good today.
Okay, is it okay if you're on Channel 9?
It's fine.
Okay, yay! All right. Oh, and you've got books all along here.
Stuff.
There's another.
Here's where we do enterprise library.
Really?
Right? Yeah.
You're the Enterprise Library people?
Say hi.
Wow. That's actually really cool. Hi, Chris Tavares. Chris is my friend from Portland, and I miss him. And he works here, which is
We're
cool.
taking care of him, don't worry.
Okay, good.
This is
If any
the room
harm
Ed
comes to
mentioned-
that man.
This is the room Ed mentioned before. If you peek in, where
Okay.
the room was basically a 6-seater, and we opened up the walls and turned it into a 12 because this team needed that much space.
That's amazing.
So those things.
Also,
Just come out this
is
way.
not a hallway.
It's not a
As
hallway.
long as we don't go all the way through, we don't have to pay the $1.
Oh, really?
Can you say hi,
So we have to
guys?
pay $1? Yeah. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Oh,
Hey,
yeah, I see trouble. No, we're on our way out. I don't make that kind of money.
So yeah, so we're closing up the lap here, back to where we started. It's a really great place to work. It's a lot of fun. The facility helps, but ultimately, what really made this out for us was the team of people who just love to work together
Yeah.
and love to solve customer problems. That's what it's been about for us all along, and this facility just makes it that much easier.
Yeah, but we were very happy in the cave as well. Please don't take away the TV, but just being in the cave and being here is the same type of spirit. It's about
That's
the
right.
work and the customers, and
Yeah.
that's what motivates us.
So
every
to
day.
close this out, I'm going to ask my boss, Jeff Sandquist, to film briefly. Could you make sure that we're all in frame here? And I just wanted to give you guys hugs.
Oh, come on.
You did a good job. Oh, wow, it's like a team hug, just like everything else you do.
Yeah.
You guys just can't do anything separately, can you?
No.
Right
No,
on.
I'm going to make you one by one. Hug one by one.
There you go.
It's going to feel weird for you guys. There, that's what it's like to be in my world, okay?
Right on. Perfect.
Your world is one big hug, my world is separate hugs.
Okay, we can do that. We can do that.
Well, anyway, we're gonna be done now. So,
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Rory.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Thanks a lot.
Very much. I am going to be back.
Please
because
come back.
This,
Anytime.
I mean, just to even like hang out and
You'll have more questions
use
next
your
time.
TV. Or
We might even put you to write some code.
You want to write code?
I don't know how to do that anymore, man.
Oh, okay.
I carry a camera. I don't know how to do it. Yeah.
All right.
But anyway, so I guess
Bye, everyone. Thank you.